Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We are glad you're with us. What is it like to become a pilot in your 40s and 50s? The challenges are unique for those of us in midlife, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences of being a midlife pilot. Join the Midlife Pilot community and listen in every week. We are not CFIs or particularly intelligent, so if you want to learn how to fly, talk to anyone else other than the hosts of a podcast. Even this intro was too challenging for us, and we used a robot to do it. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello and welcome to episode 176 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we share the experiences and challenges of flying in midlife. My name is Ben. I'm a pilot based in the Atlanta metro area, flying a Cessna 182, and today we're talking about flying with pilots and strangers and pilots, and some stranger pilots.
Strange pilots, yeah.
With me today, as always, it's my good friend, Mr. Siskin, based in Nashville, flying a Cherokee 180 named Lucy. How you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great, and I am flying a Cherokee lately, which has been nice. Glad to be here, and it's a good day.
Awesome. Also joining us, our good friend, based on the West Coast in Portlandia, flying a CTLS we like to call the Egg. It's our friend Ted. Hello, sir.
Hey, glad to be here. Yeah, not flying the Egg because it's in for its annual, but I did have some exciting flight at 3,500 feet and then flying with no engine. So that was fun this week.
Huh.
Yeah.
Care to expand on that?
We'll get into it. Yeah, we'll get into it. By the way, just for our introductions, should we have like an Arsenio kind of...
Well,
by the way,
Mark come in as the booster. Yeah. Yeah.
He did an interview with Conan O'Brien. He's got a very interesting story.
Oh, yeah.
He's got an autobiography out that you should probably check out. So,
all right. Podcast derails. Check.
Exactly. Right off the bat.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Brian, you said you got to do a little flying recently?
Yeah. Well, we've been dealing with some maintenance things. We had our annual, which, by the way, went smooth. I hope yours is going smooth, Ben. We'll hear more about it, but our annual went great, and then immediately the fuel pump went, the electric fuel pump. And then that took a minute. And then when that went in, some fuel lines got injured, and I guess they just didn't want to be woken up after their years of sleep. And so ordered some, and I mentioned last week that the people at, Aerospace Turbine Rotables helped me out so much. They sure did again. Got all that going. Everything's great. And yeah, just did a bunch of flying, not anything important, just getting out there, just flying. I flew with my ground student, Chris. We just did some fun flying, and they served as a little bit of acclimation to the Cherokee universe for him. He's been to Oshkosh 5 times. He's got a lot of experience that I don't have, and I have some experience that he doesn't have. So it's been fun to fly with him. And that's been good. Did a little breakfast run over to the Southern Air at Mike 93 and met some interesting characters over there. Saw some airplanes that haven't moved in 12 years that are taking up hangar space that, not only are you seeing the plane go fully down, but also a hangar space taken, and it's really frustrating to watch. But anyway, had a great, great, great time flying. Beautiful weather. It was super gusty coming in. Yesterday, it was like 20, gusting 27 when we brought it in, which I kind of enjoyed. And all's well that ends well. And then the landing light didn't work, so I couldn't do my night currency, but that's okay. One thing at a time. I know what the problem is. And this is fixing a wire on a landing light I can't wait to solve such a simple problem. This is great. The plane's running awesome.
Let's hope it's that simple. And for a second there, I thought you said, the wind was blowing 28, gusting 27. So it was like a negative gust by 1.
Yeah.
But I couldn't really hear it. So I, as we've said in the past couple episodes, have not been flying because we are still an annual. But the good news is that I think it's going to be done tomorrow. It's been a smooth annual. We're waiting on new spark plugs, basically. We did have a minor issue with the alternator when I was getting ready to take off and take it over to the other airport where our mechanic is. Had a discharge for a little bit, and then by the time we got to the run-up area, it was charging again. But I will say we did get a chance to meet up with a longtime listener who is based out on the West Coast. Our friend Arrow Grizzly was in town for a week, and we went and had some really great tapas. We had Arrow Grizzly, One Dull Geek flew down and joined us. And we had also in the chat, our friend Lord Alpha Juliet was there. My wife and AJ's wife joined us, and Arrow Grizz brought one of his friends from his employer. And we just had a great time, had a great food, and then the guys went over to a bar called Johnny McCracken's, nice little Irish pub in downtown Marietta, and sat on their back patio and had a few cigars and told a lot of war stories. And I'm very proud to show that Arrow Grizz brought this patch, which will be going on my backpack very soon.
Excellent.
So that was about the best hanger flying I've done in a long time. So we're sitting there, we're all talking. This other couple walks out to the patio, and we're like, come on, show us or join us. And turns out it was this guy and this girl who had just met recently, but the guy was a pseudo pilot, midlife guy. So hopefully we can increase our listenership by one, if nothing else.
Right. That's awesome. Sounds like a good hang.
I understand there was some adjustment to the stereo system made, allegedly.
Yeah. So if you'll recall from the Nashville fly-in, we were up on the rooftop bar, and the elevator music that was played was way too loud. And so our friend Ted decided to disconnect the speakers. Well, we had the same thing happen.
Be clear. You said elevator music. It was being blasted out by the pool. It was not in the elevator. It was just elevator music.
Sorry.
Happening loudly outside the pool. But I just don't want people to think that Ted is running around disconnecting wiring inside elevators.
Or that we were hanging out and having a party in the elevator.
Kind of skipped over that part. My bad.
Yeah.
It's all right. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, yeah, we had to turn the music down so we could hear ourselves think. And it was a really good time.
That's awesome.
And hopefully we'll get some flying in, and then going to Sun and Fun on Wednesday to be my first trip down there. And I won't be flying. I'll be in a plane with Lord Alpha Juliet. So everyone keep me in your thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. Now, you had alternator issues 2 years ago?
Sure did. It was coming back from Oshkosh.
Oh, so 2 years ago.
No. Yeah, I know One Dull Geek was in the plane with me, and we were shooting an instrument approach, and we lost the alternator. I think that was 2 years ago, actually, Ted.
Yeah, AJ was involved because you had to transfer precious cargo.
That's right.
That must have been 2 years ago.
That's right.
Yeah. That's when you ended up at Owensboro.
That's exactly right.
And then that's when I went to go meet you when your plane was done, and you showed up in an L-39.
Yeah, exactly.
That's correct. That's exactly right.
So same alternator, and you're having trouble with it.
Well, we don't know yet. I don't think so. It may have been just some wiring. I don't know if it's the actual alternator. He's going to find that out tomorrow once we have spark plugs. So we'll see.
Yeah. Cool.
And Brian, do we want to go ahead and knock out the...
Well, I wanted to tell you a little story first.
Oh, sorry. I thought...
Man, we got this whole guy Ted over here.
Exactly.
No, but he was telling us about his annual and all that, so I thought he was done with that. So
no, I was telling you about the annual. I was telling you about being at 3,500 AGL. So
no engine.
And no engine. I had an engine until that point. I was borrowing the one from the plane in front of me that was towing the glider up. And so I had my first glider flight.
Yeah.
It's actually a place where commercial glider makes sense because you can give demo rides to people and give like tourist rides and stuff. So that's something that apparently they do quite a bit. But so I signed up to get the rest of start my glider lessons and everything else. And I hung around for about a day and a half and sat there on my phone and learned the ground handling course. So I was legal to like drag gliders around and do all that work. But the weather was bad, and there was a bad combination of tow plane pilots and CFIs. And then the weather. So between those things, I didn't get any more flights in, but I did move around a bunch of gliders in the day and a half I was there. So it was a fun experience. That was kind of my goal this month, was to start doing that.
Nice.
Very cool. So how did it feel?
So Lord Apple Juliet said it feels really weird when you first come off the toe, and he's right. That feeling, I didn't think it was going to be anything special, but you do that, and that is quite the feeling. Also, learning to fly through the wake of the tow plane is quite the experience as well. So yeah, it was good. My rudder skills are lacking. You use a lot more rudder on a glider, and you've seen the yarn, the tuft of string on up there. It's opposite of step on the ball. So you do the opposite, and I need more flights, right? That's just not a habit right now. It's like, oh, it's over here. Oh, which way do we need to go? And which is the same that happened when you first start flying powered stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So do you think it's something you'd like to do a lot more of?
Yeah. Looking forward to it. So it's been on the list. So yeah, I wanted to do it.
Here's what I see in the future, Brian. Ted's going to be one of those guys who does the gliders going across America, riding Mountain Way. Have you seen some of these videos where these guys do these, 4,000 or 2,000 mile journeys in a glider?
It's definitely Ted's personality.
100% see that happen.
It's definitely Ted's personality. I can see that fully. And I don't know why, but I didn't even know until, I don't know, sometime fairly recently, the last few years, that was even a thing, that you could just
go distance.
Like a video came up on my YouTube and it said, whatever, glider flight from Vermont to Virginia. And I thought, well, how do you do that?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, it's almost like there's physics at work.
Yeah.
As opposed to mankind's incessant desire to just completely beat the universe into submission to do our will and our bidding.
Recreational gas burning. Yeah.
I think that is awesome. Well, I want to hear more about it, and I want to ask you a lot more about it. But we got to move on. The question I have actually that I want you to think about is this whole thing about the feeling you're talking about when you disconnect. I'm really interested in that. I don't know if we have.
Yeah,
we should probably just move on. But that's really fascinating.
And we'll probably make it a topic coming up once I have some more flights. But it's like I literally only had one flight, right? And read stuff. So
that's actually why I think it'd be great to capture a lot of your initial perceptions, so that then when you've got these 4,000 mile flights or whatever, you go, I remember when I didn't know which way to step on the thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you want to just get into housekeeping?
Let's go ahead and knock that out.
All right, Belly Scrub. Hey, join our Patreon community and help us keep the Midlife Pilot podcast ad-free. Your support makes this show possible, and every membership level gets you into our incredibly active Discord community. Our Landomatic members at just $1 a month, that's 25 cents per episode, get access to the community level Discord channels where pilots connect, share experiences, and support each other. At the Hershey Bar level and above, you'll unlock the full Patreon channels with expanded access to discussions on instrument training, plane ownership, flight debriefs, safety, career changes, plus exclusive behind-the-scenes content, extended interviews, and deeper conversations we can't share anywhere else. It sounds really bad. We should probably change how that's written. It's like
mid-edit,
Or like,
wait a minute, AI did get it right the first time?
Or like,
it's even worse.
We're going to get sued if we have these conversations in public.
No.
You gotta join that. At the Caps Available level, you'll get into our Podcast Insiders channel where you can see how the show gets made. Plus 10% of every dollar goes directly to Freedom Aviation Network's anti-human trafficking efforts. For everything Midlife Pilot Podcast, to support us on Patreon, send feedback, grab merchandise, check out event information, read our blog, and more. Just visit midlifepilotpodcast.com. And if you're enjoying the show, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and we'll read it on the air. Then hit subscribe or follow in your podcast app so you never miss an episode. It really helps other midlifers find us. So midlifepilotpodcast.com. And we've got some good feedback coming up. Thanks for everybody kicking up on the feedback. It's been really, really good. We've gotten some great video messages and typed messages and Morse code and all kind of stuff.
Yeah, I watched that video message today.
Yeah.
We get things that people send us. Mostly it's them cursing us out, but that don't necessarily make it to the show. So thank you all for writing in. It's always appreciated.
Yes.
I want to go over our Patreon and Discord world. In Patreon, we have some new people at the Landomatic level. We have David and Michael A. At the Hershey Bar level, we have Andy R. And at Caps Available, we have Corey K., who's an upgrade.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all of you for joining us. In Discord Accomplishments land, it's been kind of quiet this last week. I don't know why. We had terrible weather, but you didn't.
In terms of accomplishments.
Yeah.
Everybody's staying home watching the Masters. I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
What?
That's a sports thing, yes.
Yeah.
So anyway.
It's a Southeast thing, I'll say that.
Rich H celebrated that he signed Logbook for the first time as an AGI. So as an instructor signing it, that's a cool feeling. I like that. That's a good share. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And then for listener feedback, we got a couple. Brian, why don't you go ahead and take the first one? This is a response to a response.
We hoped for a One Dull Geek rant response, but he's reported to have a life outside of all of this, and thus had to write a reply and could not do a rant, which is fine. No, thanks, Mark, for writing back to this. So here's the feedback from our own One Dull Geek responding to Cameron's comment from the last episode. Mark says, in the last episode, Cameron pushed back on my claim that certified aircraft can be a cheaper entry point than experimental, and he raises a fair point worth clarifying. When you compare similarly equipped, similarly aged aircraft, experimental is always universally the better deal. Cameron is right about that. A C-172 pushing six figures or a PA-28-235 topping 150,000 are real numbers, and I don't want to gloss over them. What I should have been clear about is the floor of the certified market. Experimental aircraft are rarely more than 40 years old, and the category simply hasn't been around long enough. Certified aircraft, on the other hand, go back decades further, and that long tail creates some surprisingly low price points. I found several Cessna 150s and a Piper Tomahawk on Trade-A-Plane priced around what you'd pay for a Honda CR-V. So Cameron and I are actually talking about two different things. He's comparing apples to apples across the spectrum, and I was pointing to the very bottom of the certified market where age brings the entry cost down considerably. Both things can be true. The point I was trying to make is that those older aircraft also come with hidden costs. And to Cameron's point, my moving to experimental is about a less expensive option in a large part due to those hidden costs. Thanks to Cameron for keeping me honest. So yeah, I really appreciate that. I mean, ultimately, wherever you're looking, you're paying one way or the other. Sooner or later, everything's trade-offs in aviation, as Ben Singer says.
Yeah, there's so many things to compare there. It's not just plane A versus plane B that's experimental, and so it's really hard to make all the factors even and make that work out. You're like, oh well, this plane is this amount of money. I can get 172 for that price. Okay, well yeah, but it's 30 years old. So those comparisons are always just all over the place. But the advantages that Mark is getting is one of the things you get from the experimental world. The ability just to throw instruments into it that are not certified and cost a third the money. It's seeing the G3X hitting things like our friend that has the A36s there in your area, Ben. Yeah. So he's got G3Xs, and it's like those have been in the experimental world for a while because they test them out there and then they bring them to the big kids. So yeah, it's cool.
And I believe those G3Xs in the experimental world are significantly cheaper than they are in the certified world. And that's the point that I was going to make. Everything, what do they say when you're buying an airplane? If you can't afford two, then don't buy one. It's the maintenance cost, and everything in certified is always going to be more expensive. So,
well, okay, but Cheapskate Aviation told me that if you can't steal two, you can still steal one. So there are options here.
I mean, if that's your jam, that's fine. And as Brian says, that what I say is everything's a trade-off. So
there you go.
I'm going to hit the next review, which I really liked. It comes to us from Jason L. And the title is, the subject is 5-star review. Ben, Brian, and Ted, as the subject line states, you fine gentlemen earned this. I found your podcast a little over 2 years ago, somewhere close to when OG Chris moved on and Ben and Ted became a part of the awesome threesome. I have been hooked since. However, I should have done this a while ago. My name is Jason L., and I'm now a certificated pilot flying out of TPF, which is down in Florida, and congratulations. Airport in downtown Tampa, Florida. I began my official training in April of 25 and just recently passed my check ride on 27th of March.
All right.
I found Yep. Congrats. I found your podcast while waiting for my medical to work its way through the deferral process. All 11 months of it. We can certainly sympathize.
By the way, isn't it apropos that the Midlife Pilot podcast serves as this like a raspberry sorbet to otherwise medical deferral misery? You know, we're this panic room that people can kind of go into and smash things, you know, whatever.
I could see the TV ad now. Are you in your deferral process for the medical? Go check out the Midlife Pilot podcast.
Totally.
He continues, of course, this gave me all the time I needed to pour over every episode from the very first one. The guests you bring in and the banter, conversations, and camaraderie you three share takes me back to my youth. We do act like
children.
Yeah. My dad was a professional pilot for 50 years, and as a kid, I used to go to work with him at every opportunity that was afforded, oftentimes to fly. Sometimes it was bumming around the office, hangar, or main terminal, etc. Your podcast brings me back to those simple times and helps to regenerate memories of my younger days. Hanging with my dad and his coworkers, doing what he loved and talking about what he loved, flying. As life would have it, I ended up carving a different path in the U.S. Army where I served for almost 30 years, most of it jumping out of planes instead of flying them. Oh, thank you for your service. I spent the better part of my career, 26 years, about 45 miles northwest of Bryan and the Bachelorette Super Charlie at Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Oh, yeah.
Serving in the 5th Special Forces Group as a Green Beret for most of that time. That's pretty cool right there. Of course, the many years of abuse and numerous deployments left me with some medical hurdles that I had to overcome, but we have that in the rear view now. I lost my dad a year and a half ago, unfortunately, and I was not able to complete my trek before his passing. I am sure he's watching me, though. Brian, your book was pretty therapeutic. Several of those great stories got me to reflect on similar moments early on with my old man, great times. In fact, I'm going over to my sister's to pick up all of my dad's log books, all 81 of them.
Wow.
Yeah. I can't wait to look back through the history of them. Anyway, guys, I can't thank you enough for the community you've assembled and the weekly podcast that I look forward to listening to. All the best, Jason.
That's awesome.
That is so awesome. That's heavy.
Yeah, really, really cool. So, and we did get a review. Ted, you want to?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a review from Xander. Title, a great resource for pilots, 5 stars, of course. I found a Midlife Pilot podcast recently, and it has been very uplifting. Makes me want to get to my nearest flight school and fly for hours and land at the same airport. Thanks for what you're doing, guys. Perfect review. If you write in, I will send you that shirt. So, Xander, if you hear this, send us an email.
Definitely. Yeah. So, for those that don't get the joke,
yeah,
go look at our t-shirts and it'll make sense.
Yeah.
That's a great review. And by the way, I just want to say to Jason, really appreciate you reading the book that I wrote and the idea that it served as something to you, or the idea that it served as a means to reconnect you to relational memory of things with your father is what it's all about. So that's the greatest sort of, if you want to call this feedback, that's the greatest feedback that can possibly happen, because it's just all we're doing here is putting things out into the universe and they come back in different ways. You don't know how that's going to work. And when you hear things like that of such specificity, and I get a sense about who you are and what you're going through and what you've been through and what that stuff can mean. And you've had quite a career. I'd love to hear more from you. So please find more reasons to tell us your stories.
Definitely.
So main topic. Let's just get into it if you guys are cool with that.
Yeah.
I'm ready to roll.
How's everybody in the chat doing? It looks like the chat's going pretty well here. I see Lord Alpha Juliet has shown himself. So that
He has. He's making a comment back to Tedder's glider experience. Both, he's coming to someone else in the chat, both will make you a better overall pilot. Glider is cheaper and will help you feel the AC aircraft better, not your air conditioning.
Opposite of that.
Exactly. For your tail wheel, therefore saving you money in the long run more than likely. So comparing the tail wheel versus the sailplanes.
Well, I mean, if anything, you're just going to save money not side loading landings all the time without realizing it and having to buy tires too much. When you
That's right.
When you get those kind of activities done right with the rudder, you buy less rubber. So
yeah.
All right. Now, what we've received some feedback that I think kind of prompted this. This is a subject that we have talked about in a certain way before, but I think we wanted to bring this back up in a little bit of a different light. We all have had scenarios where we have flown with other pilots. When we do these things, our events, a lot of people will fly with people that they have never flown with before. And that is fraught with its own assumptions, considerations, inferences. Maybe there's an unofficial Midlife Pilot Podcast certification where anybody that's in the community, you can fly with anybody that's in the community and they're probably okay, but that is doubtful. We've probably got no, but you know what I mean? It's like it is a context clue to who you're flying with and the validity of maybe their skills or safety mindset and all of those things. We wanted to talk about flying with pilots, flying with other pilots. Also wanted to kind of turn this around. I would love to create a document out of this topic and out of the feedback we get from here, everybody in the chat tonight, and any feedback we get in email after this. If I have an end game here, I would really like to have two things: a really well-sourced community guide to how to fly with other pilots, all the things that you never think about or are uncomfortable to talk about. And then on the flip side, haven't you noticed that every single passenger that's ever flown with you that is a non-pilot has to go through this with no instincts other than just a gut instinct? They don't know the regulations. They don't know if you're supposed to pre-flight every time, or they don't know anything. So how can we put something together that might inform non-flying passengers better? If there was a way, I've had people reach out to me and say, hey, people that don't live maybe where I live, and they say, hey, a friend of mine just got his pilot certificate and he's offering to take me up to fly. I mean, I've known him for a long time and he seems like he's probably trained and done all his things, but they're reaching out to me knowing that I'm a little bit more experienced and saying, what should I ask him? Or, we take for granted that we know about all these certifications and all these qualifications and airworthiness and all of these things. Imagine really what it's like to be from the perspective of the non-flying passenger. We've got a lot of people trusting us blindly, but for our spouses, maybe it's just a quick way out of this whole thing that they've gotten into anyway. I don't know. But ultimately, I just find this sort of bi-directional nature of this kind of problem or challenge or thinking to be really interesting. And I'll set it off just by saying, and I've mentioned this before, one of the most impacting things that a pilot ever told me when I first got into my training and was out on the field and talking to different pilots, he had a Pilatus, and this guy he pulled his glasses down, looked at me, and I asked him, I said, do you have any words of advice for a new pilot? He pulled his glasses down, paused. He wasn't very talkative, but he looked at me and he said, there's nothing more dangerous than a plane full of pilots. And that's to a new person, that would be counterintuitive. Why would that be? So maybe we pick it up there and then kind of work our way back to the end game of what would we tell someone if we frame it from the non-flying passenger, and somebody doesn't have a midlife pilot podcast certification.
That's right.
What would we do for there? So starting from the pilots with other pilots, and there's a lot of we do a lot of networking. Ben, you're talking to a lot of people. You don't just go get in the plane with anybody, even if they have a bunch of hours or a bunch of ratings. There's a lot of things that you're doing, whether consciously or subconsciously, to evaluate that person. How do you handle that, or how have you handled that so far? And how do you handle the discomfort of that? It's not an easy, especially if it's somebody that's got more experience than you, but just in general, from pilot to pilot, that's a very awkward conversation. How do you have those awkward conversations other than these podcasts?
I would rather, I hate to dumb it down this much, but I'd rather hurt somebody's feelings than die.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel. It's an interesting time for me because I'm looking to build multi-time. I'm networking with a bunch of people who are also trying to build time for different purposes. It's a point where I'm looking to save a little bit of money, so it's more important for me to find somebody to help split costs, unlike it had been in the past. So it is very much on the forethought of my mind. I've been put into contact with probably a half a dozen people in my area who are wanting to time build. And when you're trading DMs on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, it's hard to pick up anything on that. I've made a conscious decision. I have flown with somebody who I'm not going to say was unsafe, but I just felt slightly uncomfortable the entire time I was in the plane. There were no checklists. He didn't sump. I just noticed a few things. I don't know how long, if he had filled up, I don't know. My spidey senses went off. And that's not the way I want to learn when not to fly somebody is after I get out of the airplane with them. But sometimes that's what happens and you can't do anything about it. The chatter is also kind of a telltale sign for me. If I'm talking to somebody that has flown 35 different airplanes and, has 1 or 2 hours in each of them, I don't know that I run across that much, but again, it's time and type is kind of something that I really want to look at. It's I hate to boil it down to this, but it's more of a vibe that you feel when you're talking with people.
So and I want to get into that a little. I want to try to extract some of that because that's what I'm finding most interesting. Ted, do you have vibe check, like what do you call it, like a rubric, a vibe check rubric?
As a feral cat, I stay away from most people. But yes, it's hard for me to have a checklist for this or, kind of personal minimums for, you've got to have this much experience or whatever.
Right.
A lot of it's just that vibe. And I don't really care. I'll fly with students. I'll fly with people that have been flying for airlines for a zillion years. It doesn't matter. The difference is how they are approaching it. And Ben's example of not sumping is a great example of that. By the questions you ask on how much care they're taking. And generally, you're flying in somebody's plane, right? Their personal plane. So it's not like this is the shared rental, that type of thing. Sometimes it happens, but so you figure they know the plane a lot better, but it's really easy to take all those shortcuts.
The other aspect of it, I was talking with somebody who's helping me. It's a recruiter friend of mine. And just because they have a lot of experience doesn't necessarily make them safe. She told me of 2 people that she was able to get interviews for at airlines, and they were CFIs, and they could not pass the ATP simulator session. They barely knew how to fly. And these guys are CFIs because they've spent all their time in the right seat, and apparently a lot of information, a lot of muscle memories atrophied. And again, there are telltale signs out there. that would cause me to raise an eyebrow to say, And if you want to save their feelings, say, you know what, something's not right, or my wife just texted me, I need to get back home, or well, left the iron on and I got to go back and turn it off. Whatever. It's there. Again, I would rather hurt somebody's feelings than be in a plane with a wing falling off of it.
Yeah. I think also there's just a gulf between VFR, let's go bum around, versus we're going to go do actual IMC. Or things like that. And the currency conversations and the other things get even more important. And, and this is, hey, thanks again to Checkmate Barry.
Yeah.
Because he's got safety checklist that on the flip side of that has a really great guide for CRM, establishing all of your CRM policy for that particular flight on a flight by flight basis. And I think that is so important. And I think that I'm getting a little bit more to solution as opposed to problem right now, but I think that a lot of the way that you deal with whatever it is, the vibe, the disparity of experience, any number of things that might give you pause, those are things that you then also have to combat with. The CRM agreement now means I'm actually going to be PIC, or this, I don't know, whatever it might be. You have to be willing to figure out where that compromise works, I think, on a spectrum. But I think the CRM planning is a huge piece. And what you don't want to do is be in a situation where you're kind of sketched out by somebody a little bit, but you kind of go, it's probably just me. Then you get into the plane. Then you get more sketched out about not just them, but maybe even a little bit also about the airplane. And then you end up in the air, and then now you're in the air and you're even more sketched out about them because now they haven't done comms very well. They've been confused about directions. Now you're wondering about, are they tired? Are they just having a bad day? But ultimately all those things are distracting you. And then also it's just not fun, right? At that point, you're just having fun. So
you've done this, Brian. Ted, I'm sure you've done this. I've heard it from people outside of our circle of the Midlife Pilot podcast. When you step in the plane and you sit down, the person that owns the plane, or the PIC for that, is, this is what's going to happen, and I'm not going to ask you to do anything. If you see something, say something, or gives at least a quick debrief of what to expect before you turn the engine on.
Yes.
To me, at least, that tells me their mind is in the right place.
Yeah.
So why don't we get to the comments real quick, Ted? Do you mind hitting some of those?
Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to hit Nathan Ballard's comment first. He said, I'll chime in from the pro pilot's perspective. The best folks I fly with have zero ego. If you encounter ego before flying with someone, that's a major, major red flag, number one.
Yes.
That's a great point. That humility, and it doesn't matter the difference in hours. We use that as a proxy for a lot of things. I think you all know what I mean when I say that. That I can ride with a student pilot. I can ride with somebody who has 10 times the hours of me. It doesn't matter between that on how you're going to talk to each other in the cockpit and how you're going to learn and take advice.
Yeah. There's also and I always say, if I'm flying with you, Ben, or whoever, I always remind people at that point before we start the engine and the CRM is being broken down, I always remind people, I don't have an ego. And so if you see something, say something, my feelings will not get hurt. This is not about that, right? At the same time, there's a bunch of weird wrinkles here. For instance, sometimes you feel pressure when you're flying with another pilot to let them be involved for this because you know that they're a pilot. And so you just want them to be involved, right? And so, for instance, I don't know, Ben, at your airport, it's a pretty busy place. I fly out of John Tune a lot, pretty busy place. I know the environs and the situation so well, and I know exactly what to say, what to ask for, what not to say, what not to ask for. I just know how to navigate the situation as efficiently as possible because of experience. So if I'm with somebody else, why am I going to ask them to just do comms and start handling all these things and managing the ground operation when it's really not that hard? It's not relieving. It's actually causing me more taxation now to monitoring and correcting maybe what they're doing and trying to advise them on what the best way is to go about it. And then that creates an annoying feeling too for them because they're like, well, wait, I thought you wanted me to handle this stuff. And now you're talking to me like I'm fine, right? And then it sets this whole thing,
Yeah.
So sometimes there's a weird reverse dynamic that happens there where, you might be in busy environment that you're familiar with in IMC or something or whatever. You get a high workload setting and you're just used to doing everything yourself. And by divorcing yourself from the comms, sometimes we've talked about this, Ben, right? And Ted, sometimes doing the comms is part of the biorhythms of what you're doing. And to be just flying the airplane sometimes can feel disembodying and strange. So you have to think about all that kind of thing with your CRM plan. Don't feel like you have to involve a pilot just because they are a pilot. And you can even explain these things. And I've done it before, just said, look, I feel super weird if I don't just do all this myself. But then once we get it in climb, I'll turn it over to you. And then you can handle everything from departure out or whatever. And, just know what works. You don't have to include people and don't presume that offloading effort is actually offloading attention or cost of time or focus.
Couldn't agree more. Wanted to hit a few other comments from the group. Rich, a friend of the show, says, I'm reminded of a crash, don't remember where, in which 2 CFIs were in the plane and caused it to disassemble itself while airborne. So experience is not always a telltale sign that somebody's going to be safe to fly with.
Yeah, let me read this. It's not that particular case, but this is one of those textbook examples. This is an NTSB report from 2022. The crash was in 2020. I'll kind of summarize it as we go, and I'll put in the show notes. But 2 pilots in an RV6. They were calibrating some new avionics. Pilot handed off the controls and did some steep turns to calibrate a G meter. Both the pilot and the owner believed the other was flying the airplane after this demonstration. After deciding they would return to the departure airport, the airplane was flying low and almost hit the ground twice. On both occasions, the pilot pulled up, then once again let go of the controls, believing the right seat person was flying the plane. Both expressed discomfort about how the other was flying the plane, but neither communicated their concerns to the other in a way that was understood, nor did they confirm who was flying it. The third time it neared terrain, the right seat, who was the owner, called for the left seat to pull up just as the pilot was about to take control of the airplane. It hit a field, flipped over, came rust inverted. Damage, they both walked away. So what a great example of, 2 things. Number one is 0 people are flying the plane. The optimal number is 1, and 2 would be better than 0, just saying. And the other thing is, it comes back to the whole thing about training planes, about just let go of the controls and it's going to do okay. That plane did amazingly well considering nobody was flying it for that amount of time.
Laurel and Hardy Airlines.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's just wild. What I think is really funny is I'm glad nobody got hurt, obviously.
Yeah.
When the insurance company says,
who was the PIC?
Who was flying at the time?
They both pointed at each other going, he was.
Yeah.
That's going to be a weird conversation, on the way back from the tobacco field or wherever they went down.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Like, hey, so I was starting to wonder.
Yeah. I do want to also discuss, Brian, I think you alluded to it, is if we could include some information for non-pilot passengers and maybe some tips as to...
Yeah.
There's an audience out there that are aviation enthusiasts that have never been up. And what you don't want to happen is they choose the wrong person to go up with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so what do you think are some of the questions? The obvious one is how many hours you have, but that doesn't necessarily tell you anything.
Right. And so again, let's just set the context here. Imagine that a friend of yours that lives in another place says, hey, a coworker of mine offered to take me up in his Cessna 172. He just got his license. He's super excited. He's been, flying his family around a little bit or whatever. He's asked me if I wanted to go fly. I mean, I think in concept, I'd really love to go fly, but what do I need to ask him? I don't really know what to ask him, but I feel like I should be prudent in some way. What do I need to say here? What do you think? And so starting with that,
I think let's level set that if you want to get an idea of how much a passenger knows about GA, how many times have you talked to a passenger who doesn't understand why you need an IFR rating, who thinks that the minute you get your private pilot's license, you can fly in the clouds? What's the big deal? They don't understand the difference or anything like that. This is the level that we're thinking about is a full passenger, not a GA enthusiast.
Right. Because you don't want to be the middleman of that conversation between, you don't want to be pushing back to your friend in another town that wants to fly with their coworkers. You don't want them to go, well, find out what ratings they have, and what does that even really mean anyway? So you want to give them things that they can use. So I think that really, in the simplest terms, I think this starts with, and what we've kind of got outlined to start in this line of thinking is, what does your gut say? You can put the question right back on them. Because if they asked you, then it probably means they're having an internal conflict about it on some level, and they're looking to get talked out of it, or at least exploring it and being prudent. So I think that you can ask them, do they seem like a person that operates safely in all that they do? If the coworker also, you've been at company parties with them, or you've maybe ridden to lunch with them in a car or whatever, you've seen their behavior in other arenas. Do they seem like just generally a safety conscious person? So that would be the first thing. And then
you muted yourself, Brian.
Your turn, Ben.
I muted myself, Ben. Sorry.
You started. Oh, I thought you were still going.
You'll show your way out.
The one thing I was going to suggest, a subtle way to find out how safe they are, is if they follow or they volunteer for Angel Flights or some other organization similar to that. If they're being allowed to fly patients around the country, that I think does speak volumes. So,
yeah, it's one of many things that show kind of a safety mindset. In my motorcycling days, when I was teaching motorcycle safety, I could always recognize instructors that were either military or in aviation, and there's a reason for that. Having that thought process about safety and about kind of structured thinking comes out really easily. And so you should be able to tell with someone. They may be joking, and then the minute they get to the airport, they're serious about pre-flying the plane. That's the sort of thing you're looking for, is someone who knows the difference between those and who you can tell is being thoughtful about reducing risk.
Definitely. A couple of other normal questions that I think would be very reasonable to ask is, I love this. Brian is changing it up as I'm trying to read it.
Improving.
I wish you guys, so ask them what their recency of experience is, or how do you fly often and regular? Yeah, it's a benign question. And it can also tell you that, flying is a perishable skill. If they're flying once every 2 months, it's might be one to back away from. And so I think that's a very good point to make.
I think also just in any of these questions, if you're, I think that one of the things to arm your friend with, that's going to go back to their friend, is to say, I'm going to give you a few things to ask them while they're answering it. Monitor if they seem resistant, or if they don't respond well to even having these questions asked of them, that in itself is an indicator that this is not a good idea, because they either have something to hide or they're just not emotionally mature enough to be subject to scrutiny or whatever it might be. So, yeah, I mean, you can say, when did you last fly? And then, if they're actually getting to the flight now or it's happening right now, you can just say, like, ask them, sounds dumb to us, right? But it's like, have they checked the weather? You as a non-flying, non-pilot passenger, absolutely could ask the pilot, have you checked the weather? How's the weather looking? What should we expect? Those are perfectly legitimate questions to ask. And then above all, is this plane current on its inspections? You don't have to know about annuals and ELTs and all this stuff, right? But just, is this plane current on inspections? And you can always frame those things as curiosities as opposed to indictment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can say, like, so how often does this get inspected? And you can kind of open the conversation that way.
Very benign question.
If the answer to when did you last fly is simply a year, that's not a good sign.
Right.
It should be something much more recent than that. I wanted to kind of cover another couple of things that you can, again, ask in very casual ways, but ask if they've ever canceled a flight or when the last time they canceled a flight for weather is, and what they learned, what they discuss in that way. Watch if they walk around the plane. There's a little discussion going on in the comments about, did you walk around the plane after you had lunch, for instance? Did you do a full pre-flight? Let's just leave it at, did you walk around the plane? Did you make a complete circle and count the number of wings before you took off after lunch? And the other thing is backup plans. And I think this comes into play in a lot of ways. We talk in IFR flying about alternates, but that's also true in VFR flights. That's also true in a takeoff briefing. I think I've talked to both of you, Ben and Brian, about this, but it's like, you may shorten your takeoff briefing depending on how nervous the passenger is. You don't want to talk about all the ways this could go wrong. But for instance, the number one thing that I always say is run behind the plane, not in front of it.
Yes.
If we get out in any sort of emergency.
Yeah.
And it's those types of things that are really key to me. It's just that little stuff.
Well, but those things, by the way, if they're experiencing that, it's probably too late, right? They're on this ride.
Yeah.
But those are things that can be your last ditch. Raise your hand. I'm out of here. But yeah.
Or you ask them before you get in the plane, what's the backup plan if something were to happen?
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's a fair thing to ask for. Even if, like, hey, the runway's closed, what would you do if,
Yeah. And weather's a huge thing. If just seeing their attitude regarding weather, if they say things like, we'll be fine in a dismissive way, you can read we'll be fine in different tones. If you've got some low clouds or some things going on and you're a non-flying passenger and you don't really know what that all means, and you see them being dismissive of the weather in a way that is not respectful of the weather, you'll be able to get a sense of that. You got to be sensing that they are serious about weather.
Captain Todd in our chat has made a good point. He said, Brian's point is a good one. You could talk to them about hazardous attitudes and tell them to look for those. So to your point, if they're annoyed by your questions or they seem dismissive, I think that's a red flag. If somebody is safety conscious, they're going to want to invite those questions. Please ask me more, because they're going to have a good answer for it. If I thought that the weather was, if there was a system coming in, we're not taking the flight because I'm not going to, mess around with it and hope to try to get back just in time.
Yeah. Well, I think really what we should tell people after all of this is say, I understand that this sounds like a lot of things, but you asked me for guidance and I'm giving it to you. Here's what you should go back and tell that person or ask that person. Now, if you don't like all of that, and this seems like a lot, you might as well just become a private pilot yourself. And then you'll know that you can just take over the situation irrespective of the airplane Airbus, it doesn't matter. Once you're a private pilot, you can handle it. You can take over any airplane in any situation.
Yeah. And I like your last point that you have here on the show notes. If they've been drinking, probably a good time to say no. Also, if they seem fatigued or stressed. But if your pilot is sitting at the airport bar and he's walking to your plane, that's a good time to maybe...
You think you're scared of him flying? He's scared of him flying. That's what he's drinking.
If you did shots with him 3.5 hours ago.
That comes back to don't write the first few lines of your NTSB report, right? Like
that's right.
That is exactly how that starts.
That's right.
Oh, but before we go out, we've got to share Mark's comment here. Wendell Geek. He says, "I'm learning a ton of things to say right before Brian gets into the airplane with me." So we can see if Brian goes running. Yeah.
That's right.
Hey, this is totally not related to anything that we've wrapped up this topic. That's fine. Listen, I just wanted to say this before I forgot it because it was something I thought about when I was driving home from the airport yesterday, which is when I was coming in to the airport, I heard somebody announcing a teardrop entry and this whole thing, and it just kind of got me back into the warm fuzzies of the teardrop argument and all of that. And I was just thinking, I feel like we need a shirt that speaks to this in some way. And I was just thinking, is there a way to have it be, is it too controversial or maybe on too many fronts to say, I had this thought while I was in the airplane by myself and I started laughing, but like teardrops are the chemtrails of pattern entries or something.
Man, that is such an esoteric shirt. Only about 1 out of 100 people at Oshkosh would get that.
But those that do.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people at Oshkosh, it's just anywhere else in the world, they're not going to have any idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, especially if Oshkosh is going on, then you could actually be anywhere else and no one would know.
That's right.
Hey, but we're still halfway on the topic. Captain Todd is being very serious here, which is ask about if they have a safety briefing with capital letters safety. Straight up, I'd be so happy with that question. That is very true. If you're a passenger, if you know any passengers, just tell them to know what a safety briefing is before they go to someone else. That alone is wonderful. And I would love if new passengers who only talked to Ben before they got on the plane with me said, okay, so what about that safety briefing? If that was the one thing they asked, that'd be great. And
it's a legal requirement.
Do that. Yeah, it can be done very casually. Or it can be done very.
But I mean, something has to be done. You got to do something. And Checkmate Barry's got it covered.
Yeah, he definitely has it. I've used that card before.
Yeah.
Again,
I spend a little bit more time
wrapping
on
it
that.
up.
Yeah.
I think if you have a pilot who, if you start asking all these questions and they are not only receptive, but almost even encouraging you to continue asking the questions, I think that's a good sign. I'm not saying that they're a safe pilot, but there's no ego there. And I think that's a great start to the first flight with somebody new. So,
all right. Well, if you've come along the podcast this long, thank you for being with us. Please send us your ideas for the teardrop T-shirt. I'm really my submission is teardrops. Teardrops are the
teardrop entries are the chemtrails of pattern entry.
Yes, thank you. What he said.
Yeah. Lord Alpha Juliet says, teardrop entries make airports cry.
Okay.
That's pretty good. Well, great topic. And I want to thank everybody in the chat. They were very helpful in contributing, and send us your feedback. Tell us how you vet other pilots, what non-pilots should be asking when they get into the plane with somebody for the first time. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Going to remind everybody, please leave us a 5-star review. It really does help us get to other people out there that are midlifers. So for tonight's words of wisdom, I may have said this before, but it was a really long time ago, but it's talk about strangers. For us Gen Xers, growing up, we would call our friends using the phone, also known as the landline. We were also told never get in a car with strangers. Today, we use our phones for the sole purpose of summoning a stranger just so we can get in the car with them. Signing off. Episode 176 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Goodbye, everybody.